Mary Hogan, followed by Steve Hume.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity again today. I appreciate all the hard work, and I look forward to the report on populations that are disproportionately affected, and I was pleased to hear that you were able to hold the hearing on April 16th and 17th, and that you weren't impacted by the sequestration, and were able to discuss the issues related to Down syndrome and dementia. I'm here, today I have something very positive that I'd like to share. As a result of a generous donor, the National Down Syndrome Society has successfully completed a publication related to aging and Down syndrome, and I have brought a number of these to you today. It's I think that it's going to be a very useful tool for families. It was a very generous donation. It equaled 5% of the NIH budget on the research related to Down syndrome. And the information contained in this publication is both extensive and validates the joys and struggles of individuals with Down syndrome as they age, and the struggles that their families face with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. I'm really nervous today. I'm not quite sure why. Anyhow, I'm leaving some with Helen, and I'm leaving some with Dr. Peterson. I'm also here today because I need to give you an update on Richard, the gentleman that you followed for the last several meetings. Since I last appeared in January of this year, Betty, age 83, and Frank, age 88, continued their relentless efforts to network for Richard, age 46, with Down syndrome and Alzheimer's disease. Richard's continued to decline, and he requires constant supervision for safety, assists with ADLs, including dressing and toileting, etc. On April 15th, Richard was moved. Can you put the slide on? This is Richard, and that's Richard with Betty, his 83-year-old mother. And this picture of Richard was taken on April 15th when he moved from his family home to a 60-bed facility for adults with intellectual and physical disabilities and or mental illness. This seems a match made out of a sense of urgency rather than a person-centered match. 2 weeks into the placement, Richard continues to wander around disoriented and seeking some sense of stability in his new setting, and he has eaten very little since his transition to this new setting. Betty and Frank, on the other hand, struggle to come to grips with Richard's departure and their changing role. They experienced great angst over Richard's return to a more institutional setting and its potential impact on quality of life and quality of care for Richard. I want to remind you that in the midst of their grief, Frank and Betty feel that the system has, in one way, overlooked Richard. After 40 years of caregiving for a man to whom they are not biologically connected, who they embraced at age 5 after he has deinstitutionalized and subsequently placed unsuccessfully in a foster home, they feel deeply saddened that he has not had the opportunity to move to a smaller ICF for people with intellectual disabilities. They did their best for Richard and over his lifetime and wanted the best for him, most especially in this stage of life with Alzheimer's disease. In Richard's hometown, there's a 6-bed ICF that was not an option for him. And Frank and Betty attribute this to his diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and the implication of care requirements. And they asked me to come and ask this question today. If an ICF is developed by a nonprofit organization and funded by CMS, are they allowed to exclude individuals because of a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia? And how is utilization of ICFs tracked on a state and federal level? Who knows what's happening with this group of people with intellectual disabilities and Alzheimer's disease or other form of dementia once their family care systems are exhausted? Let's see. I think that planning for the needs of aging individuals with ID and Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia seems at very best a low priority. Medicaid incentives should be provided to state DD's leadership to facilitate proactive planning and inclusion for these individuals as they develop the disease process. You know, I'm here with other families, and I recognize that on a grassroots level, there's a great deal happening related to becoming more informed about caring for individuals with intellectual disabilities and Down syndrome, or intellectual disabilities and dementia. I do think there is a gap in terms of leadership on a federal level, and would like to see more intra-agency and interagency dialogue to address this issue. In closing, I thank you for what you've done. I thank you for the attention that you've given this matter, and I hope that those that are disproportionately affected, including people of color, Hispanics, Native Americans, and those with ID, are recognized as a group that are entitled to and deserving of the same level of care that's expected by the general population. When I left here the last time, I went to Baltimore, and I met an 80-year-old woman of color who was managing her husband, who was entitled to VA benefits. He had dementia, and so did their 55-year-old daughter, who had developmental disabilities. She struggled to manage the care for both of these family members and was beside herself with a long-term prognosis for their care. Nonetheless, all of these individuals and their families require a voice and a network of support free of discrimination and a reaffirmation of dignity in all stages of life, including life after the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And I thank you for putting up with my nervousness today. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but anyhow. I hope you'll take time to look at the literature. I think that you'll be very pleased, and I hope that you'll share it when you go home with your constituents and families.
Thank you. I thought when you skipped over the J's, I got a reprieve, but I guess I didn't. I'm Matt Janicki. I'm co-chair of the National Task Group on Intellectual Disabilities and Dementia Practices with my good colleague, Seth Keller. One of us have been attending these sessions since you began, and we kind of report to you what we've been doing. Our organization, our National Task Group, basically is built up of volunteers, and our main mission is trying to make sure that the issues related to people with intellectual disabilities, particularly around Down syndrome or other conditions, are built in and included into the mainstream thinking that goes on in this particular effort through NAPA. We've been in existence since 2010. I think in the last 2 years, we've sort of been thinking about, over the last 2 years, we did a lot of things. And we've been looking back and seeing what we've accomplished, what we haven't accomplished. And I think what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years is build sort of the infrastructure that would enable people with lifelong disability to be part of the system of care for dementia. And we've been successful, I think, in some ways, and we still got a lot of way to go. In other ways, we've got about 12 more years to go with your timeline, so which is good for us. I did want to pass along some information and then just tell a little story. I did prepare a handout, which is out on the desk if you want to hand it. Just basically what we've accomplished, and we do have now a report that's been put out for the public and for others. It's just titled Guidelines for Structuring Community Care and Supports for People with Intellectual Disabilities Affected by Dementia. And we've put it out in a kind of a popularized version with some photos and things so people can use. This helps agencies and families and organizations kind of structure their thinking in terms of how to best provide care in the community. We've also now created an FAQ, a frequently asked questions sheet, which has been posted on our website. So it answers a lot of the questions that people do bring up around this issue. And as you maybe have heard from the last time we talked, we do have an early detection and screening instrument, which is now in practice. And I was very glad to hear Alistair Burns talk about the need for early detection and screening. And I had met him a number of years ago when I was in Manchester and had an opportunity to chat with him about this whole issue of dementia, and it just recalled all those memories of being over there talking with him. But this is an important instrument. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from organizations who are now using it, and it's actually been translated into German and Italian, believe it or not. So it's not so useful here, but it is useful in Europe where people are using it. So I bring that to your attention. We've got a number of other things coming out too. We've got practice guidelines for physicians that are going to appear, I understand, in the Mayo Clinic proceedings in some future issue. It's been accepted, and we're moving ahead with that. We've got a couple other things that are in the works, which includes developing national standards for dementia care in conjunction with the organization CARF, and that will be coming out next year. And we're now just starting on developing an in-service education package for direct care professionals, which I hope we'll have that out by the end of the year as well, which will give an emphasis for curricula in terms of what agencies can do to train their staff and what families can pick up in terms of new information. The kind of story I wanted to relate to you is I've been listening to the sessions today and thinking about the emphasis that's been going on. And I got to thinking about, as my colleague Mary Hogan was up here talking about the situation in Nebraska. She's been following this family for a number of years now as they kind of trying to find the right services for their son, Hank. And I had the good occasion to be working with an agency in Wichita, Kansas, doing some research with them over the last couple of years. They had developed 3 co-located dementia care homes, 5 persons apiece for people with intellectual disabilities. And I was there at the beginning when they were still constructing the building, and I've been there every year now since then, capturing information on the functions of the individuals, the whole process the agency's going through. And I guess I was thinking as Mary was talking that these are 15 very lucky individuals. They have a specialized place to live with good quality care staff, an agency that's committed to dementia care specialization, and they'll be there for the rest of their lives. When I talked to them recently doing a debriefing, one person of the 15 had died, and they've now put somebody else, enter somebody else in one of the homes. So it's about 16 people have had the benefit of those homes. And I think in contrast to what the gentleman that Mary was talking about had to go through and couldn't get into a small group home that was near his home because of whatever, I don't know, discrimination, prejudice, inability of the agency to relate to dementia care, and ended up in a nursing home many miles away where his family has no close contact with him. And the kinds of things that brought to my mind this morning, and I was listening to the discussion this afternoon, is that yes, we're doing a lot, we're trying to get at the research issue in terms of the basic stuff to find out about what's going on with dementia and how are we going to lick it by 2025. But we also need to think about how we're going to provide the care supports. And I went through that on a personal level with my mother and my brother who both had Alzheimer's. And I know what it's like to be the caregiver, as the young woman spoke about earlier. We really need to focus more about how we can do that. And I guess we're, in our task group, are waiting for this federal task group report to come out to see what is going to happen in terms of the focus on intellectual disabilities. But we're hoping that does include a very strong focus on caregiving supports, because there are a lot of families multiplied that situation in Nebraska who really need help, and they need good quality help in terms of how to provide services for their sons and daughters. Thank you.